Saying is, my feet are fucking killing me. I've never heard so many nice things said about somebody that's still alive. But actually, I noticed my wife whispering to my daughter back there, "Are they talking about your father?" But not to worry, my speech won't be too long, guys. At my age, I can't remember half of it anyway. But I'm very humbled by everything that was said here. But not to worry, I have the strength of character to fight it. So I'll be fine. But I'd like to take a moment and acknowledge my family back there. My wife, my brother, my sister, my daughter, my son, my nephews, my nieces, my There's way too much fooling around going on in this. Somebody put a lid on it back there. I'm going to take the whole family out next week. It's on me, you know. And we're going to go to that nice French restaurant down the block of Lake Taco Bell. The best for you guys. But I'd like to mention my big buddy Bob. Big Bob, he's not here. And like Reggie's words were, I take to heart. I called Big Bob. I said, "Bobby, what's retirement like?" And Bobby said, "Roman, you can get up in the morning and do whatever you want to do." So as I was driving home that night, I got to thinking, as I walked through the door, I said to my wife, "You know, I've always wanted to be a great dancer. So when I retire, I'm going to take dancing class." And in my wife's benevolent wisdom, she said, "Dancing class? You're going to take build it around the house class." So I said to her, "You want me one of those little old men at the old man's club at Home Depot that goes through little screws and switches?" And she said, "Yes." So I says, "I'll be a dancing carpenter." So that's a secret of being married a long time, guys, right there. But I'd like to just introduce my wife of 31 years sitting back there. And I have to admit, I wouldn't have made this finish line if it wasn't for her. You see, when we first got married, I was fortunate enough to do quite a few locations. So home was a foreign word to me. Home didn't exist. You know, I wasn't in town. And we had 2 children. And so I left her a lot alone to raise these children. And I must say, it wasn't easy for her. And even when you are in town, as everybody knows, that you work 12, 14 hours a day and you're not home anyway. So it's a tough schedule for family. But when the kids got fairly adult, my wife decided to take a job as a teacher and a public school teacher. And I'm proud to say today that my daughter followed in her footsteps. And she's a nursery school teacher today. And my wife is a public school teacher. They both go to work with straight hair and come home with afros. You know? And as you see, my wife and my son back there is a musician. He's the bass player. You're here tonight, guys. And again, he followed in my wife's footsteps. My wife sang at Carnegie Hall in New York City, the mecca of nothing but great performances. And I thank you for that. But I have to stop and mention a lot of the gentlemen that I started with that didn't make this finish line. And how many do we know? So many. Ralphie, Agnon, Tommy Agnon, guys, we lost them in their 40s. There was Greg Sachin, Kirk Jones, so many, Herman the German. And I would just like to take this moment and dedicate this finish line and say, guys, we stand together today. And, oh yes, one more thing. Ralph, if you could use some divine intervention, I could use a couple football scores down there. You know? But like I said, I'd like to mention Big Bobby. There was a quick story I'll share with you. We were working, and if Bobby was here, he's a 6'8" African-American gentleman, and I'm a short white man. And when we walked into the stage, we stuck out like sore thumbs. You know? And one time a director says, hey, I want those two guys in my shot. They look weird enough. So we were actors. And, you know, the little boy, what happens, the little boy comes up with a gun and sticks us up. We were playing two film crew guys, which was a stretch for us already. He says, the little boy comes up and says, hey, give me your money. Hey, yeah, stay cool, kid, everything's good. And I never wanted to tell Bob, but I've been mad at him for 30 years. Everybody said he was a better actor than me. But tonight, Bob, wherever you are, you're forgiven. I would like to also mention my buddy Neil Bowman. There was a moment in time again. Neil says, come on, I got us in the shot, Roman. And we were working with Cedric the Entertainer. And what we were doing, we were playing, it was a baseball stadium, and we were playing in the stadium with Cedric, and we were reacting off everything that Cedric said. But I didn't realize, here's Neil, here's Cedric, and here's me. You know, and Cedric goes, you okay, Roman? I'm good. You kidding me? And the director said, action. And as you know, the first rule of an actor is you don't look into the camera. And I did one of these. Right into the camera. Cut, let's do it again. All right, Cedric goes, Roman, are you okay, kid? You're sitting next to Clark Gable right here. Okay, the director again, action, and once again. Cut, and then you hear an announcement from the booth of the director. Roman, you're quite an actor out there. Hence the end of my acting career. Thank you, Neil Bowman. But if I may say, I'd like to acknowledge my Universal family here. I'd like to thank Ms. Beverly and Gary for the opportunity to work here. I feel very blessed to have met you guys. Second. You know, what we are, guys, are we are in the film industry. We are in the filmmaking process. We are the vision of the filmmaking process. And what we do is we take a great story and we make it greater. And if you take pride in this effort, you will last 38 years too. That's all I got to say about that. But I'd like to also thank John and Beverly again for this get-together of these fine people here to let me step down with a little dignity. Thank you. And I would like to take a moment and mention my buddy Ray right there, who I stood next to at the counter. And he said to me when he started, he said, Roman, I'm going to try to ease you into your retirement the best I can. And that you did. Thank you. I would like to thank the people I stood shoulder to shoulder with here for years. Once again, Ray, Steve, Altoona, Greg, Holly, young Jamesy, and recently young Michael, the Lima brothers, so many, Tracy, Marla, David from Drapery. If I forgot somebody, please forgive me. But I just want to let you know that I hear that the blues and stress takes years off your life. If that's true, then laughter puts years on your life. And if that's true, you guys have put years on my life. I would like to finally mention my great buddy George, of 38 years. I've known him ever since I've started this industry. George, we worked in the prop house here in the 70s together, and I remember looking at George and telling him, "Hey, George, I'm going to go do some shows." And George says, "Yeah, go for it." So it's been 38 years later, and George is still here. It's amazing. It's amazing. You can walk through this lot here, guys, and look at, sure, there's some 30-year people, but not 39-year people, and working in the same department. George is a relic of this studio. You know? But I just like to just say one more quick thing about my good buddy George. George is the type of guy that you think you know, but you really don't. George is a war veteran of the Vietnam War. Not just that, he's a decorated war veteran. Seven
It's about
times.
you, Roman. It's about you, Roman.
Well, give me a second, George. I want to do this, George. I want you to know who you are. George is a decorated war veteran, and I just want to read you a little something. 7 medals, real fast, George. I know you're uncomfortable. He doesn't like me talking about this. But I just want to read this to let you know who you have in the building here. Award of the Bronze Star. Private First Class Rogers distinguished himself by heroism in connection with ground operation against a hostile force on February 1st, 1970, while serving as a rifleman with Company A, 2nd Battalion in the Republic of Vietnam. On this day, Private Rogers was in a night ambush position when his element came under intense hostile fire. Private Rogers exposed himself to this intense enemy fire in order to return fire onto the hostile positions. Disregarding his own safety, he then crawled across 50 meters of open terrain in order to capture 2 enemy weapons and a large amount of ammunition. Private First Class Rogers' actions were in keeping with the highest standards of the military service and reflect great credit upon himself as unit of the United States Army. By the direction of the President of the United States, we present George with the award of the Bronze Star. What I want to say is, George, we've given a little. You gave it your all.
Roman, there's nobody like you.
You know?
That's true.
Well, George, what I say is, George gave me this watch. I just want you to know I wear this with a lot of pride, George.
Thank you.
Okay, and then finally I'm going to kind of try to conclude this here and just tell everybody, hey, in 2 weeks, nobody's going to remember the words that were said here. You know, it's true. But I would like to take a moment as a group, and let's acknowledge all the workers that came before us. For they live in our memory, and they pointed us forward, always.